This is Radical Love Live, an ongoing series of podcasts and special events where we explore faith outside the boxes. Hosted by Mark Dilcom and Kelly Wilson.
Hi, Mark.
Hi, Kelly.
How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you. Yeah.
So, for our listeners who are wondering what in the heck just happened there, I don't know. We didn't get our cue quite correct. So
I think we were staring each other down. Like,
yes,
who's gonna greet the other first?
That's right. So it's good to see you, my friend.
Likewise. It's good to connect with each other. We've been seeing a lot of guests lately, but
yeah, we have.
So I checked in. Like, what are you up to?
Yeah. So this is going to be the What's Kelly and Mark episode. What have we been up to? Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, first of all, let me ask how are you doing?
I am fine. I'm a little slow today. I was up late working last night, so I got to get my sleep schedule a little bit more normal. So if I seem a little scattered, but thankfully it's Friday.
Yes, it is.
Weekend is coming.
Yes,
it will be awesome. But anyway, I'm glad to be here.
Good.
With my friend and co-host.
Yeah, we did. It's great when we get together.
How are you doing?
I am freaking awesome.
I love that. We gotta get those t-shirts, man.
We do. And I may be a little bit more freaking awesome because of something I just did last week. So do we want to dig in?
Yeah. What'd you do last week?
Well,
sorry to my producer. I'm moving that.
Yeah. He's like, what are you doing? So I went on a retreat.
Oh, that's right.
Yes.
Yeah, you were up at it was Holy Cross, right?
Yeah, you got it. Holy Cross Monastery. Yep. So for our listeners, I'll give a quick background about Holy Cross. Familiar, it's not my first time at this monastery. This is a Benedictine Anglican monastery. The monks themselves are they're part of the Episcopal Church, but they don't say that so much. They say they're Anglican. Okay, that works for me. So it's part of the Order of the Holy Cross that was started by Brother Huntington in like 1901. So they've had an ebb and flow of houses over the last 100 and some years. This is their mother house, I guess, the original one. So it's up in the Hudson Valley, just south of Kingston, in Ulster County, but it's right on the Hudson River. They have a large, amount of land, and it's really beautiful. And it's woods and it's meadows, and you can go to the river. And if you want to swim in the river, you can. Which a little chilly at this time of year for that, but you can do all that. And the monks themselves are, they're Anglican, but they do a number of things there at the monastery. Most notably, they make incense that is used in a lot of churches.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
So, monasteries always have something that the monks or the nuns do. And so this is theirs to do that. But I will share a little bit more maybe later if we talk more about this, because that's not the only thing that they do. They do a lot of good works there that are not just making incense and hosting retreats and doing the daily offices, which that itself is something to experience. And for you folks that you're like, what the heck are the daily offices you talking about?
Yeah, not like going to work, logging into your computer,
it's not
drinking your coffee.
It's not those kinds of offices. So in any both in the Anglican tradition and through the Book of Common Prayer, and the Roman Catholic Church will do this as well. They have the offices, which are these things that happen in religious orders that they do every single day. And so it starts off in the morning. Time might vary, but usually it's going to either be 6 or 7. It's going to be the first prayers. And then you have typically like a daily mass. After that, maybe a couple hours later, then you have a lunchtime gathering, and then you have one before supper, and then you have the final evening as well. So in total, you have at least 5 daily offices that take place. And they can, they have a structure to them. So they're usually reading Psalms. And there are, oh gosh, they go on. It is like getting into the heart of things, but it's not not inside the Bible. They have their own documents from which they work. The different Psalms and the prayers that they say for each of the offices.
Well, it's interesting that, I think that most people, when they think of monasticism, they think, when they think of monks and they think of nuns, they're not necessarily, they're thinking of Catholic traditions, Roman Catholic traditions.
Yeah.
And I don't know that everybody realizes that there are monastic traditions that are outside of that are in some Protestant traditions as well.
Oh, absolutely. Or Buddhism, or, monks and nuns are not, as you just said, are not specifically Roman Catholic, but also go across the different denominations of the Catholic or Christian tradition. But yeah, of course, there's different faiths. They have the nuns and monks. One of the most popular that we know would be Thich Nhat Hanh. So a lot of people know his name and his writings. He passed a couple of years ago, but he was in his 90s, but he was a classic example that he was a Vietnamese Buddhist monk, but very well known. People knew his name. He wrote a lot of books. So, and it's to see monasticism in action like what I did see. And so maybe even back up, it was a friend of mine who I know through another spiritual community. She is an associate of the Order of the Holy Cross. And so in talking, because we're in community together, she's like, hey, I've never been to this one. Would you be interested going with me? And I said, sure, because I've been there before with on group retreats with our home congregation, there at St. John the Divine.
Mm-hmm.
So I was familiar, but she'd not been. So we planned that this retreat together. So we went up, but what this one was going to be different. It was personal retreats for each of us, and we were going to both do them primarily in silence. So we were there just to be in community with the monastics, and then spend time with ourselves, respective. Which of course that's one reason why people do retreats. You can do guided, or you can be silent and be there, but do your own thing.
Interesting. And you say it's in the Benedictine tradition, right?
Yes.
That's back to the rule of Saint Benedict.
That's exactly what it is.
Yeah, yes. I remember studying medieval monasticism back in college, and studying Athanasius and the Desert Fathers.
Yes.
And there was the difference between, I'm taxing my memory here, I think it was the eremitical and the cenobitical orders, that there were some orders were really about like, go live by yourself in the desert.
Yes.
And then there were some that were a group would gather together and had a little bit more interaction with their community.
Yes.
Would you say that?
Oh, they're definitely the latter, not the former. Okay. These monks, and so folks, if you have not done a retreat, I really encourage you to do that. It doesn't have to be the Holy Cross, but they're a shining example of a monastery that's really easy to do, because they're very friendly. I don't know how else to say it. They're really talkative, and you have dinner with them. You have 3 meals with them. Actually, they're not separate with you at any time. Now, some of the meals might be taken in silence, but everybody does it. But otherwise than that, they'll talk to you and they engage, and you can also ask if you wanted one of the monks to be a spiritual companion or director, spiritual direction. They'll do that with you as well. So, it's really amazing. I will say also, what I love about this, though, this is they're. I'd be careful, but I would say they're progressive would be the best word I could say. Mm-hmm. And it's not like I'm a true subject matter expert on monastics, but what I mean that is I got to know a few of the brothers while I was there, and when I wasn't in silence, and They can live as they are, and what I mean by that is a couple of them are queer, right?
Hmm.
And you won't find that. I think maybe in another denomination where if somebody actually might even need to keep that in a closet. So I know one of the brothers there specifically. His story is that he was a part of a Roman Catholic order, and he
Hmm.
left because like he couldn't reconcile to that, and he left quite a vocation. In that monastery, he was also a college professor, but he felt like the right thing for him to do was to move into the Anglican order there at Holy Cross, and where he's completely celebrate himself as he is. Of course, he still held to the order to the rules of Saint Benedict, so they take their vows and everything else. But it doesn't mean that one doesn't want to celebrate their own wholeness and who they are fully created to be. And it's really kind of awesome actually to see that.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
yeah. So
Yeah, it's unfortunate that particular part of humanity becomes such a dividing factor in different,
right.
between different religious groups and different denominations.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also great that there are, um, Christian organizations, and there's organizations in other religions as well, but that are affirming and accepting of people as they are.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And it was refreshing to see that. Something else I would tell our listeners too is you don't have to do the offices. That's not a requirement. So you're like, that sounded really intense. Listen, don't have to sign up for that. There are no requirements. You don't even have to walk into the chapel if you didn't want. They're there to meet your needs somewhere and meet you where you are spiritually. So, they practice radical hospitality. And you see it demonstrated fully there. So if you want more information, I can't recall their URL exactly.
I'll look it up.
Thank you. But while he's doing that, it's simply the Holy Cross Monastery, West Park, New York. And don't mistake it for another Holy Cross Monastery that's, I believe, down in the Mid Atlantic, like Virginia or something else like that, because that is not it. Not that that one's not good, but it's a different one. That's Greek Orthodox, I believe.
Oh, this is it's a holycrossmonastery.com. An Anglican Benedictine.
There we are. Okay.
Yeah. Do you need to be part of a church community or sponsored by a church or anything to sign up for a retreat with Holy Cross? Or you can just
go. And
just as I am,
just as you are, just go. There's no admission requirements or any test or anything else that you have to pass. Like I said, they practice radical hospitality there. They also have an associates program as well that for the folks that feel called to be a part of their community at large. Like I said, my friend that I went with, she's a 30-year member of that, and I'm entertaining that. I had thought about it and discerned on it a few years ago, the last time, and then COVID happened, distractions and whatnot. So, but this last retreat, and that's why I spent some time out of silence talking to the brothers and the one that is in charge of the associate program specifically. What are the expectations, and because you can't say requirements, it's really about expectations about being an associate. So you truly are a part of the monastic community, but living out in the world. Your vows are not the same, right? You don't have to take vows of chastity, et cetera, things like that. But, you do, there are expectations, like I have to write a rule of life for the next year, how I plan to live out my life, in all ways, emotionally, spiritually, physically as well. What are those things that, how am I called to on outreach and those things? And then I submit it. And, these are the things that I'll be held to an account, then follow up, on an yearly, check-in with the director of associates. So, and there's about 600 associates worldwide.
Wow.
For their order. Yeah.
Wow. And I love that idea of the rule of life. I remember, if anybody is curious to go buy or borrow or steal or the rule of Saint Benedict. It's a very tiny little book.
Yes, it is.
And I really love the way that he sort of looked at his life and his said, I'm going to organize this in a very
Yeah.
orderly way.
Yes.
I'm going to name the things that I believe. I'm going to name my values and be very conscious and intentional about it.
Yeah.
It's an interesting exercise. It's something I did a couple of years ago in EFM, which is the lay ministry
Yes.
training through the Episcopal Church. One of the things that we did in the first year of that was develop a rule of life.
Yes.
So when people are hearing that term, the rule of life, if you look for the rule of Saint Benedict, it gives kind of an example of that. And there are also some more modern examples out there.
Well, I have a more modern example as well, separate of this.
That's right, you do.
I do. If anybody is curious, I have my rules, plural, of life that is in my framework of faith. So if you could just go to my website and click on framework of faith, I think the rules of life is one of the very first documents that's compiled in there. If you look at the table of contents, you'll see it, or just scroll through it, and you'll see it. Now, mine has like 100 and some things on it, but don't freak out about that. They're common sense things, right? So, like be nice and, be kind to myself and just things. But what I love about the concept of rule of life is we should all have those, regardless of where we are spiritually. Like, okay, yes, it can apply to that. But let's say somebody doesn't have a faith system and they're okay with that, which fine, great, whatever works for you. I think rules of life are still important, because how else do you measure your goals? Like what is important to you, and what are you doing in your life, and how do you hold yourself to account? It's not about how you're going to hold anybody else to account. Like, rules of life are for yourself and yourself only, right? You don't read them like everybody should do this. That's not a rule of life, right? It is like, here's what I'm going to do, or how I'm going to live. So yeah. What do you remember what your rule of life was?
Well, I know that it starts with two very basic principles, which are do the best that you can with what you understand.
Okay.
And continue to keep an open mind to learn more after that. Like that's my bigger system.
Sure.
And I do have a document on my computer. It's kind of a living document that I keep, which is my systematic theology.
Okay.
Because I tend to think more in theological terms.
Yeah,
but,
you do. Yeah.
But I did realize, through a lot of the study that I've done and writing that I've done about the Bible, is that, when I was growing up, I always thought, oh, my rule of life is the Bible. I just kind of read things back against the Bible.
I laugh because I can see where somebody would say, well, they just make the Bible your rule of life.
And it was before I really looked at it with a lens of the tools of interpretation and the history of the Bible and the context and the fact that there's some pretty weird stuff in the Bible that if you don't look at it in context, you can go like, this can't all be my rule of life. Everyone who reads the Bible, if they're getting meaning from it, they're interpreting it, and there are different interpretations of it. And I found that for me, it was really helpful to sit down and do a kind of systematic theology of just like, what do I believe about God? What do I believe about Jesus?
Yeah.
What do I believe about the resurrection? What do I believe about miracles? And it just kind of went down through this whole list. So it's less about, at least at the beginning of the document, it's less about behavior and more about like, these are basic principles that I believe about the universe.
Well, you said that's your systematic theology, which I think is awesome that you did that, because quite honestly, how many folks have done that?
Right.
I mean, I have, because, the work I've done, but I think if you ask the average person, average is, I'm not sure what that means in this context, but just if you just ask somebody about their, who has a faith, what is their theology? A lot of folks wouldn't really know how to answer that question other than say, well, it's whatever's in the Bible or what they've learned in an institution. And that's okay. But to take it one step further, I think really is revealing of like, no, but what does this really mean to you personally? So, systematic theology, like you said, why do I believe in the resurrection? Here do I think about this dude named Jesus? What about the God thing, right? Or the Holy, or just all of that, and actually to put that down in writing, I think is dare I say, necessary for the next level.
I think so. I think there are probably a lot of people who simply don't have the time or energy for it. Or, they're like, I got to go to work. I got to do all this other stuff. I just try to be good to other people and, let God sort it out. I think there are also people who don't have, who just don't think in those terms. Like me, I'm always trying to like look at the story and look at the context and pick it apart. And, and that reminds me of a question that I was thinking of while you were talking about the monastery. Is one of the things that I've always found interesting about your faith story is the things that you've discovered through meditation.
Yes.
And through that kind of mystical experience. And I'm, because I approach the Bible as an intellectual. Yeah. And I'm not saying that to be complimentary. There's some people who might even be like, you're a bit too much of an intellectual about that now. But that in doing so, it has revealed to me that there are things in the Bible I'm not going to figure out.
Right.
And the more I study theology, the more I realize how many different pathways there are and possible pathways. Yep. And that at some point it does come back to something internal, something spiritual, something personal. Yes. That it may be a decision or it may be an admission of like, this is how I feel. Yeah. But I often think about some of the things that you've told me that you've discovered along the way. Like I discovered this through meditation. Yeah. And at the end of the day, that's probably, that's another one of those sources of theology. There's the scriptural documents, there's history, there's tradition, but then there's also experience. Yeah. Our own experiences.
Yep. Our lived experiences. That's a good point. I'm glad. Thank you for thinking about that way. And because I do use the word mystic to describe myself, and not in a highfalutin way. Just a mystic is one that explores the mystery. It's as simple as that. So it doesn't put me on a pedestal or make me special in any way, shape, or form. We're all called to be mystics if we open ourselves up to it. There is the receiving, which does come through a little bit more naturally through meditation. And also, I'm going to use a kind of a heady phrase for reading the Bible in a special way. It's called Lectio Divina, and it's spelled Lectiodivina.
I love it when we break our Latin out.
Yes, we are. And people are like, "Oh my God, he's going to nerd out here." But with Lectio Divina, you read. In this case, scripture, and you see what shimmers and what calls out there, and you explore that by dropping into your heart space. You by design leave the intellectual element behind, right? And you just let it sit with you, and it may be just one particular passage, or maybe it's just a couple of words, and just sitting with it. You can also do Visio Divina with an icon, or if you were looking at a Christ figure or something else like that, and let it come to you. And if you meditate on it, it does happen, and it doesn't take a lot of practice, other than practice, and that has opened me up to that as well. So I do that with a lot of things, but I can also do it with non-religious, writings as well, or something that's not Christian. I look for the shimmer of picking up what's spiritual and what's mystic inside of that. So
well, that's interesting. Yeah. And it's one of those things you have to sort of train yourself to be sensitive to, right?
Yes. Yeah. It's really about training yourself to be attuned to pick up on that, because once you establish the awareness, and with a little bit of skill, like, oh, okay, this is what this feels like. But it's not. It is, but it is a mystical experience by just what you're doing, because it's not. There's not. You're looking at the words, but you're looking in between the words. You're looking for, again, I've said it several times, the shimmer. What's coming to you? How does this feel embodied to you? Like if you're reading the resurrection or some element or the experience of just any one part, like how does that embody to you?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
That's so cool. I love that kind of multi-dimensional sense of the Bible. I think there was a time when I would have I would have sort of recoiled from it. I'd be like, no, this is the history of people's experience with God, and you read it, and I read it very sort of dryly and scientifically, and it actually it kind of like created a barrier between me and God for a couple of years, because every time I wanted to pray, I would have the impulse to pray, but then I would intellectualize it. There would be all these caveats. So I'd be like, God,
right.
that is God. If you are there and you're a God that has conscious contact with humans and cares about our well-being, and let's say, like, I would get this whole like long list. Like once I got to the end of that, whereas, one of the things about, the faith that I grew up in, it was not a very intellectual faith, but it was very much just kind of like, anytime I needed God, I could just be like, oh God, I need to, I need
grab
your help.
Yeah.
And that's, I would describe my kind of admission or confession of faith as a mystical experience, that I was literally at my desk writing and trying to get to, I told my whole life story, like I believed this, then I didn't believe that, then I did this other thing. Now what? And the chapter was literally called "So Now What?"
Yeah.
And I'm typing, and there's a point where I just finally was like, I just had to admit, I believe this. I believe in this faith. I believe in this God. I believe in these tenets. And it was such a relief.
Yeah,
like there was a great
burden drop away.
that and I was like, this is not intellectual at all. I cannot support this by any empirical evidence that I can share with somebody else.
Yeah.
But it's so real and so authentic. I also can't deny it.
Nor should you, because it's your faith, it's your belief, and I think that's you bring a very important point. You got yourself there, and we should allow and hope that others get themselves there too, because this is through the exploration we ask those questions, and that's natural. So you mentioned something about the Bible as an example. I'm like you. I look at it as a history book, and it's a beautiful history book, because this is the reality of our ancestors, and that who are our family, quite literally. Like I believe in oneness, and when I say I believe in oneness, I believe it all the way through. I believe that we are connected 99.9% DNA wise anyway, but I mean, there is a oneness and a reality to that for me. And so people say, oh, maybe that's being a mystic. Yeah, I would say, mystics are going to feel the oneness, I would believe. But the point I'm getting to is that I don't have to fight with the Bible at this point, at this stage, where I used to. I was like, oh, pick it apart, and this is believable, this is not believable. It's like, that's not the point. These are this is my ancestors, our ancestors, and this is their lived experiences. They understood the divine at that time, and I don't see it the same way in all cases, and maybe a lot of ways. But that's okay, because no two of us, being unique as we are going to have the identical faith. It's just not going to be that way.
Right.
So, and that's something else I find in through, the exploration, why I go to retreat. And this is why I spend time, just being, it's not about thinking, it's about being present, and letting it unfold. And how does it embody, and what do I sense in this? And what makes sense to me. And that changes, and it can ebb and flow, and it evolves. But that's what I love about my faith, because it's not stagnant. It lives with me. And today will be different than yesterday was, and tomorrow's going to be different than what today is. My faith is it moves in the moment. I don't know how else to say it. I mean, there's a consistency there, but it's always this experience in this conversation. It adds to my faith. It does.
Yeah. And I to build on that, one of the things that my explorations have shown me is that while I have this very like authentic, deep, devout faith that I hold on to, I also don't know.
Yeah.
My certainty is gone, because I'm constantly walking on faith, walking in faith.
You are, but isn't that a beautiful thing that your certainty is gone? Or is that not? Does that freak you out, or is that affirming?
No, it doesn't freak me out. It for one, it makes it easier for me to talk to people with other beliefs.
Yeah.
Because I don't come to them as saying like, I'm right, you're wrong.
Right.
I love you, but I think you're going to hell.
Exactly.
Because
There's always
you're wrong. But like condescending. It's very hard to respect someone else if you think that they're like completely wrong about the entire fate of the universe.
Yeah. Well said. So well said.
So I come to them and I'm like, I might be wrong, but I might be right. But I'm going to live the way that I know to be best.
Yes.
But I'm going to continue to be open to new ideas.
Yes.
And
which is part of your rule of life, it sounds like.
Exactly. Yeah. But it means that I'm going to approach other people with wonder and love, not with.
That's why that to me is heaven. That's nirvana. Whatever their words would, for an ideal, the perfect state of humanity, when we are, above our human condition, we really understand that it is. There is no separation. There is no difference. There's only the oneness, and that there is the love. We certainly are not there. This is part of our path. This is why I'm hopeful, though, that, as far as our respective faiths and this journey, religion itself is going to have its ebb and flows. And to your point about certainty, some people live and die by certainty in their faith. I'm like, okay, if that's what you need, then that's what you need. I don't live that way. Obviously, I'm quite the opposite. I don't believe in any certainty. I don't know if you want to ask me make me prove the existence of the divine. I'm like, yeah, I can't do that.
Right.
And I'm not worried about doing that.
Right.
I just, I got other things to think about.
Yeah.
And live. One other thing I was going to say about the retreats, circle back to that in a couple of minutes we have left.
Yes.
Was a dear friend that you and I both know asked me yesterday how I thought about what did I think about the retreat, and asked me, and the question was share 3 words with him how I would describe it. And the 3 words for me was rejuvenating, transformative,
that's a good one,
and confirming. Those are the 3 things that happened on my retreat. So transformative, rejuvenating, and confirming.
I like that because it's dynamic, but also reassuring.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, I think we've put together a really good commercial for going on a retreat.
Yeah.
And if you're not somebody who can get away for a week or whatever, there are ways to kind of have mini retreats.
Yeah. You don't have to do week-long silent retreats, guys. And if nobody hasn't for your first time, I would highly not recommend a 7-day retreat. That's pretty intense. Yeah.
I do meditations and prayers on my phone. I mean, there you are.
There you are.
There's a whole Ignatian practice. That's a whole different, we can have a whole different show about that. But the examine, and I've talked about that on the show before, but there are several of them that are between 2 and 15 minutes long that I found on Spotify on my phone, and I'm or on Apple, and or you, Amazon. But you know, and I can just sit down and listen on my phone, and it invites God into the room, and I'm thinking about things that I'm grateful for, and it's like it affects my nervous system.
Oh,
it's
my God,
not just
absolutely.
like a spiritual thing. It's not a mental thing. It's like it's like I can feel it in my fingertips. That I'm connected with the divine. It's kind of like dipping into a pool of warm water or something. It's kind of like
Yeah, I'm so glad you said that. That's how, for me, that's how I know I'm connection, because I will embodied. I use that word several times in this conversation. I do. I feel it. I'm resonating. And, you know, yes, you know, it's, as you just said, you can connect. And it can be in any way. It doesn't have to go offsite. You can go online. You know, if anybody's interested in retreats, just take a look, you know, at what's out there. You'll find quite a few different centers that are both online and in person. So,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Just don't do anything too relaxing while you're driving. Pull over.
Yes.
Anyway.
Safe meditating. Practice safe meditating. Or safe retreating.
Call an Uber. Yeah. All right.
So.
Anyway, thank you. I really enjoyed this conversation. I hope you have too.
I have, as always. Listeners, I hope you have as well. Thank you for listening to another episode of Radical Love Live with Kelly and Mark here. So.
And just want to add, if you want a different kind of retreat experience, is October. We are going to be at Theology Beer Camp. I believe it's October 17th to the 19th, Denver, Colorado. And we are one of the featured podcast partners there, but also some of our friends will be there. Tripp Fuller, Thomas Ord, Jonathan Tamanil, Catherine Keller is one of the speakers. There's and there's beer, which is in the name, and some non-alcoholic beverages as well. But if you are interested, we'll post some more information in the notes. And we also do have a discount code if you want to save money on those tickets. Radical Hobbit. There's kind of a Lord of the Rings.
Yes.
So, yes, Radical Hobbit. But anyway, make sure if you're in the Denver area or like travel, I love to go to Denver, come see us.
Yes.
That's all I got.
Okay. Thank you, Kelly.
All right. Thanks, Mark.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Radical Love Live, co-hosted by Mark Dilcom and Kelly Wilson. All rights reserved. You can find our podcast on Spotify, Apple, Stitcher, and other popular podcast platforms. Go to radicallovelive.com to learn more about us, watch recordings of our live events, and listen to our podcast. We also invite you to check out what Kelly and Mark are doing by going to our websites. Find Kelly at kellywilson.com and Mark at markdilcom.com. This is Radical Love Live, where we explore faith outside the boxes.